Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, episode 373, or episode 8 in the Do Not Be Hasty Reckoning. I'm calling this one Master Frodo. Greta,
Oh.
do you consider yourself a master of anything?
Oh. A master of anything. No.
No?
I don't think so. I don't
Humility,
think so.
I think it's, I wonder if there's just a little bit of extra humility on display there.
Well, I would consider myself good at many things, but not at the master level of any one of those things.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's, in truth, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to truly master something, so...
It does. Lots of commitment as well.
I'll give you that
Yeah.
one. I'll give you that one.
Well,
I
what
kind
about you?
of put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, master of the Tolkien Road podcast, that's for sure.
That's fair.
Speaking
That's
of
fair.
which, why don't we get started?
All right, let's do it.
All right, before we begin, I'd like to give a double up air five to our amazing fellowship. Stick 'em up, fellowship. 3, 2, 1. Whoopsh. Boom. Thank you.
That was good.
Special thanks to this episode's executive producers, Kaitlyn of Tea with Tolkien, John R., KG, Melkor27, and Saber Systems. Also, a shout out to those celebrating their fellowship anniversary in May of 2024. With the 2-year club, Michael W. and Saber Systems. The 3-year club, Malcolm C. And the 4-year club and the 5-year club I listed, but there's no one in those categories. So if you want to be in the 4-year club or the 5-year club for the month of May, now is the time to join so that 4 or 5 years from now you can be there. So
I like what you did there.
yes.
Yeah. Clever.
Salvaged. All right. Hey, thank you all to who we did shout out. Thank you all so much for sticking with us over the years. We truly appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. In this episode of Do Not Be Hasty, we continue through Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 1, A Long Expected Party. With Bilbo... Excuse me. Let me drink a little water there.
Got a little tickle in the back of the throat there.
I did.
Huh?
We're getting, fighting off a little bit of a cold here, so...
It happens.
All right, let's try that again. In this episode of Do Not Be Hasty, we continue through Lord of the Wing. Well, all the fall starts today. I'm just going to plow through unless this just gets to be a complete total disaster. We're just going to continue on with this one. All right, try 3. All right, here we go. In this episode of Do Not Be Hasty, we continue through Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 1, A Long Expected Party. With Bilbo having hit the road, Frodo is left to clean up the mess. He'll discover that sometimes being the master means working like the servant. Also, we'll see that many hobbits have a knack for the art of insult comedy. Finally, the Sackville-Bagginses strike again. This section begins with the words, as Master of Bag-End, Frodo, and ends with the words, and so, of course, not true. All right, well, let's kick things off here by reading the very first paragraph of this section. All right. Greta, would you like to do the honors here? Because that this first paragraph here, is that
Okay.
big enough for you there?
Yes, thank you.
Just making sure, I mean, that was not it. That was not insult.
Well, we were
comedy
talking
there.
about insult comedy, so I was like, okay.
I'm just trying to make sure I don't need to make it any bigger because you're on the
No.
other side of
No,
the screen
no.
is over here and you're
I
over here. So
understand. Yeah, no. But I got my glasses on. We're good.
yeah.
All right. As Master of Bag End, Frodo felt it his painful duty to say goodbye to the guests. Rumors of strange events had by now spread all over the field, but Frodo would only say, "No doubt everything will be cleared up in the morning." About midnight, carriages came for the important folk. One by one, they rolled away, filled with full but very unsatisfied hobbits. Gardeners came by arrangement and removed in wheelbarrows those that had inadvertently remained behind.
All right. I mean, I just have to ask, like, they're unsatisfied at this point. Like, what else are they hoping for? They're all obviously so full, like satiated, at this point in terms of consumption of both food and beverage.
Yep.
Why are they feeling unsatisfied? It's hard. It's kind of hard.
That's
it's like a
good
head scratcher
question.
for me.
Well, I wonder if it's just kind of Tolkien's way of just giving us some insight into the character of so many of these hobbits. Like you can kind of throw everything at them, but they're never going to be satisfied. They just kind of have this like lingering curiosity and desire that just,
Yeah, it's interesting because now that I think about it, it was just kind of a funny little touch to me. But like with many things that we've had so far in this journey, it actually seems to be saying something a little more deeply, but it's so easy to gloss over. And we're going to kind of touch on this point throughout the rest of this section and the rest of this episode. But the hobbits in general seem to have this kind of low-level need to accumulate, like to accumulate, to just have stuff and food and all, like all of these sorts of things that on their own seem harmless enough, right? But it's still an interesting sort of touch, especially in light of what we'll see with the rest of this section. So
stuff seems very important to them.
Yes.
Like
stuff.
Worldly things. Yep.
So the this comment about I love the progression here of the carriages come for the important folk. The gardeners came by arrangement and removed in wheelbarrows those that had inadvertently remained behind. And that reminded me of this great thing that I saw years ago, and I found it again on the internet. But it's an invitation from a party that Tolkien and his wife threw, sometime around the 40s, I believe. Let me pull it up here. Actually, I may need to open it in the window here. So let's share this. Okay. So, Professor and Mrs. Tolkien request the pleasure of your company on Wednesday, November 21st, 1945, to assist them in celebrating the coming of age of their son, Sub-Lieutenant C.J.R. Tolkien, RNVR, 6:30 p.m. onwards. Carriages at midnight, ambulances at 2 a.m., wheelbarrows at 5 a.m., hearses at daybreak.
That's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
It is fantastic, isn't it?
That is so good.
But I mean, this must have been one of Tolkien's things, right? Because, so actually, I didn't check this, but the line itself here in Lord of the Rings may probably predated this invitation, because this is 1945, and I'm pretty sure Tolkien had essentially completed this portion of Fellowship of the Ring by before that, like many years before that.
Okay.
Of course, he didn't complete all of Lord of the Rings until much later. But I think this is several years after he would have completed it. But I didn't check that timing. It's possible it was a last minute ad, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember what I did on that invitation all those years ago." But yeah, it is fantastic, isn't it? Right?
It's so good. It makes me want to throw a party just I can make
just so you can put that on your
like
invitation.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's straight there, and it's just something that Tolkien himself used in real life. So
good.
Just a nice little touch there.
Absolutely. Like, who would not want to go to that party?
Exactly.
Honestly.
Exactly. All right. So this is, of course, we're picking up here with the this is still the night of the party, right? So Bilbo has left, Frodo has just returned, and now Frodo is the master of Bag End, right? So he's just kind of dealt with the the things, or you might even call it the mess that Bilbo has bequeathed to him. And that is really the end of this evening. And it says night slowly passed, and we're on into the next day. And really, all of a sudden in the morning, all of these visitors start to show up at Bag End. And again, I just kind of like, what's going on here? Like, you think they would have like kind of had their fill from the party the night before, but they're here first thing in the morning to like just, I don't know, like it's almost like to harass, or like just like kind of say like what can we get out of Bilbo having left, right? Because they all, I guess, assume that he left because that's what he said he was doing. He said he was leaving. Goodbye. So I guess maybe they're here to like rummage through his things, or hopefully he left some things or claim some things that he left behind. So I found this a little bit interesting.
It's also not in very good taste.
Yeah,
really
well,
not.
Maybe according to our taste, but
okay.
it seems like in bounds, like strangely in bounds with the hobbits. So
yeah, no, you're not wrong about that, which is also in and of itself very odd to me. But.
Yeah, well, we're not hobbits.
No, we're not.
We're not hobbits.
We're not hobbits. Although I'm short enough to be one.
Actually, you'd be pretty tall for a hobbit.
Oh, would I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
I'll
what?
Take it.
5 and a half, 5 feet and a half.
5 even.
5 even. So yeah, I think you would have been pretty tall for a hobbit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
You would have been like, a professional basketball playing hobbit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next time someone rags on my height, I'll be like, actually,
for a hobbit.
actually, I would be a very tall hobbit.
I'd be a giant hobbit. Oh, good one. All right. So But what we discover here is that Bilbo has actually like designated some of the things that he left behind for certain hobbits. So he's kind of left this, this list of things that are supposed to go to certain people. And what strikes me as great about these is they're all backhanded gifts. They're all kind of these backhanded gifts, all of them, right? Bilbo's a total insult comic. And we've seen this already in this chapter, of course, with his speech at the, party. He lays a few, kind of insult comedy moments into this mix, lighthearted enough, and it stays pretty lighthearted here. But it's one of these things where if you're the person receiving it, you might be a little bit like offended, but try to kind of have to play along. So anyway, let's read through these. These are fun. All right. Okay, so it says, for Adelard took, for his very own, from Bilbo, on an umbrella. So this is the label on an umbrella. Adelard had carried off many unlabeled ones. So this is obviously saying, like, here's an umbrella in case you didn't already have enough of my umbrellas. For Dora Baggins, in memory of a long correspondence with love from Bilbo. And this was on a large waste paper basket. Whoa.
That's a little rough.
Yeah. Dora was Drogo's sister and the eldest surviving female relative of Bilbo and Frodo. She was 99 and had written reams of good advice for more than half a century. And even that, like, reams of good advice, you kind of think this was it may have been like unprompted good advice, like just being like,
just being a little bit of meddler.
Yeah, meddling, right?
Yeah.
So from Milo Burrows, hoping it will be useful, from BB, on a gold pen and ink bottle. Milo never answered letters. Yeah, so hopefully he'll find somebody to write to now. For Angelica's use, from Uncle Bilbo, on a round convex mirror. She was a young Baggins and too obviously considered her face shapely. So convex being the one that's like, because concave goes this way, right? So it's like if you're like circular mirror, and the mirror concave would be one that goes like out from you, right? Because it kind of forms a cave if you look at it from the side, right? Convex would be one that comes towards you, right?
How does that affect the image?
I think it makes you look slimmer, right?
The concave one does? Okay.
No, the convex one does.
Oh, so this one would make her look less shapely.
Right. Yes. I think that's what it's saying. I don't know. Let's double check this here. All right. Convex versus concave. Concave means hollowed or rounded inward. Yeah, here you go. All right. So here's an image. Here's an image for us to work with right here. So
so that makes sense. Yeah, that would make you look slimmer.
Yeah, because so it's kind of bouncing. Yeah, these things always trip me up. But anyway, I believe that's what it's saying, right? So I know that concave is the one that like goes away from you, right? Because it forms the cave shape, right? That's the mnemonic device I use to remember it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what that is. That's what that's saying there. All right. And then we have, for the collection of Hugo Bracegirdle, from a contributor, on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books and worse than usual at returning them. And then for Lobelia Sackville-Bagginses, as a present, on a case of silver spoons. Bilbo believed that she had acquired a good many of his spoons while he was away on his former journey. Lobelia knew that quite well. When she arrived later in the day, she took the point at once, but she also took the spoons.
Well, of course.
Yeah. Any y'all know anybody out there like that? You might even like kind of give like hint, like, you're really, this was really kind of obnoxious when you did this, and they're like, they know it's obnoxious, but they don't care. They're still got to get the thing that they want, right? So there's a little bit of that going on, and Bilbo's essentially like, if you want the spoon so bad, just take them.
Yeah.
It's fine. Here you go. They're a present to you. We'll call them a present. No hard feelings. All right. I thought it might be interesting, just to consider who some of these people are and kind of the relation to the to Bilbo. So we're going to pull up some of the family trees here, courtesy of the Tolkien Gateway. So this is Adelard took. So let's see if we can find. We can find Pippin here, Peregrine the First, right here. So we know Pippin, and then if we look for Adelard is over here. So it seems that we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations back. All right, so Adelard is like a a fifth cousin once removed or something like that, right? I'm not going to worry about getting that just right, but
Allard was down here though, I thought.
yeah, right. So that would be 1, 2, 3, and then 4.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's how that works. We've also got Dora Baggins. Let's look at Dora. So Dora over here on the Baggins family tree. We have Bilbo here, and then we have Frodo all the way. Where is Frodo? Oh, here we go. Frodo's all the way over here, and then we have Drogo and Dora, right? So Dora was Frodo's aunt.
Gotcha.
So
His dad's
Dora and Bilbo,
sister.
it appears, are of the same generation, if you will. So Dora being born in 1302 of the Shire Reckoning, and Bilbo being born in 1290. So she was 12 years younger than Bilbo. And then we have Angelica. Let's see about Angelica, the young hobbit who thought her face was too shapely. Let's see. Angelica right here. So Angelica is... let's see in the depiction here if her I don't know if that's a shapely face or not, but let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go over here to Bilbo, and we have 1, 2, 3. So maybe like a second cousin once removed, something like that from Bilbo, and maybe a little closer to Frodo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, they may be of the same generation. Yeah, it looks like it, because Frodo's 1368 and Angelica's 1381. So maybe same generation, maybe once removed actually. But anyway, those are some of the connections there, courtesy of the amazing family trees that Tolkien provides in the appendices. Just one of those things we're able to do on this because we're not, rushing through. We're not being hasty.
Exactly.
So
No,
we're able to
not.
stop and consider such things, such as the family relations of hobbits that we're never going to hear from again. Right. So,
but may appear in trivia somewhere somehow.
Well,
I'm not sure.
That's right.
They
That's
might.
right. This is some serious trivia here, right?
Serious
You get asked like, what was the name of the young hobbit who thought her face was too shapely and received a convict's mirror from Bilbo?
Now you'll know.
Yeah, Angelica Baggins. Angelica Baggins. All right. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about the Sackville-Bagginses, Lobelia, and as well as the rest of her family. Well, they'll come up many times. They'll come up again in this episode, but then they'll come up many times at a later time. So we'll have more opportunities to discuss them. The next thing relevant that we kind of find out with all of this is the place has really been cluttered over a long life. Has anyone out there ever had to deal with disposing of a lifetime's worth of clutter? I don't think you've really had to do this before, have
I
you?
haven't. Thank heavens.
Except when it comes to maybe my family a little bit. Yeah. We had to kind of help out with the disposing of the clutter of my grandparents' house. When they moved out, it was probably 10 years ago, and or maybe a little more. But they moved out of their house they'd lived in since probably the early 50s, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. And this is 60 years, right? 60 years, and they were serious, like. Not like to a crazy degree, but they did hang on to a lot of stuff, right? They weren't the type of people that got, kept really got rid of a lot of stuff and everything like that. So they kept, they'd hung on to a lot of stuff, and it was quite a challenge. I mean, it was a pretty serious task. So on one level, maybe I can understand the desire. It makes it just easier to be like, come in and just take stuff, take whatever you want, right? Yeah. To do a little bit of that. You'd probably want to prepare beforehand and just be like, make sure you've got all the important stuff squared away, or hidden away. But maybe it felt a little bit better for Frodo just to be able to say, "Come in and take whatever you want."
Mm-hmm.
But you've never had to. We haven't had to do that with your side of the family or anything like that at this point.
Thankfully not. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it's coming, but my mom. I mean, I feel like my parents have a lot of stuff. But my mom is very well organized.
So she's very well organized, and
so it's all in bins and labeled.
Yeah.
So
well, and I feel like she is pretty good about getting rid of stuff too that she no longer has any use for.
That's true. She does.
So
she does do a good job of that.
It may not be as much of a challenge when when that time comes. But like you said, hopefully it's not anytime soon. So
yeah, exactly.
On All right. So, and I was thinking about, so giving birthday presents is part of the reason for all the clutter, right? So hobbits, which we've learned already, they they give presents on their birthdays instead of receiving presents. And so you think about this, like all the hobbits who have birthdays throughout the Shire, right? They're always giving, like, assume that every day somebody has a birthday, everybody's giving presents to other people, right? So, it's an interesting thought to consider that that's how they accumulate all this stuff over time. We also learned that the poorer hobbits, and especially those of Bagshot Row, did very well. And just to refresh, Bagshot Row is, are these homes that are just down the hill from Bag End, right? So you can see in this depiction by Tolkien here, you have 3 homes, one of which is the Gamgee home, that are right down the hill from Bilbo and Frodo and Bag End, which is right here, symbolized by the green door right there.
Yes.
So
are the poorer hobbit? Is this saying that the poorer hobbits lived on Bagshot Row, or is it just saying that they're just saying that those 2 groups of people?
Well,
did
Bilbo
very
and
well.
Frodo were rich. I mean,
Gotcha.
that's kind of the one of the takeaways from all this is
okay.
Bilbo was known to be very wealthy.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think he came from wealth because he lived in Bag End, and it's this like big hobbit hole on top of a hill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's typically sort of a sign of status,
That
right?
makes
Big
sense.
house
Yeah.
on top of a hill. But these are, of course, his closest neighbors, and so it seems like he was especially good to them.
That makes sense.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
and we know that like like Gaffer Gamgee from earlier on in the chapter has a lot of respect, for Bilbo. Always like kind of sticks up for him when other people are calling him, strange and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So for Gaffer Gamgee, we have 2 sacks of potatoes, a new spade, a woolen waistcoat, and a bottle of joint ointment. And I'm assuming the joint ointment is probably because he's a gardener, and so he's bending down and standing up all the time, and they'll do something to your joints over a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Old Rory Brandybuck, in return for much hospitality, got a dozen bottles of old Wynyards, a strong red wine from the South Farthing, and now quite mature, as it had been laid down by Bilbo's father. Rory quite forgave Bilbo and voted him a capital fellow after the first bottle. So you'll remember that Rory was the individual who, when Bilbo disappeared, kind of talked a little bit of smack about him, and was and then was just like, serve another round, right? So Rory, we know, liked the wine. And we know that he was maybe a little bit annoyed by Bilbo's performance at the party, but he quite forgave him and voted him a capital fellow after this first bottle, for sure.
So well played on Bilbo's part.
Well played.
For sure. For sure. He's very thoughtful in all of his gift giving.
It was,
Yeah.
He really put some thought into it.
Yeah.
Doesn't appear that he took any shots at Gaffer Gamgee or old Rory Brandybuck. I mean, maybe a little bit of like the, being like, I know you'll really like this, Rory, with the 12 bottles of wine. But at the same time, it's like he's giving him wine, right? So it's hard to be upset about that. And it's like, yep, I like wine. What can I say? So.
Absolutely.
All right. And it's interesting that Bilbo's father was that he laid down his own vineyard. Right?
Yeah, agreed.
So I hadn't
Is that
really
on the map anywhere?
computed that before.
Or in any pictures or anything?
So it says it's in the South Farthing. So let's see if I can discover the image of the Shire here. Do I have an image of the Shire already? Yeah, I do. Okay, great. Here we go. So the South Farthing is here, right? It's this large area down here. Hobbiton, of course, is, use my marker. Hobbiton, we'll use a different color since it's already red. Use green. So Hobbiton being right there. There's the hill, right? Which, the Bag End is.
Yep.
Hobbiton, Bywater, and then the South Farthing down here. So it's a good ways off. That's not right next door. That's a good ways off. So that was where, it's over some hills, right? Over kind of a hill country area. So it probably would have taken, you assume, day 2, 3 to get there and back, but that's the South Farthing. That's where Bilbo's father laid down a vineyard, where old Wynyards came from.
What a great name.
Old
Wynyards.
Yes.
It's like Lord of the Wings, but
Yes.
instead of vineyards,
Thank
it's
you.
vineyards.
Thank you for reminding everyone of
You're very welcome.
my mess up at the beginning of this episode. Lord of the Wings. Yes.
Why does everything sound funnier when you just like replace the first letter with a W? Like it just sounds so funny.
I don't know. It's just one of those things.
Whoa.
Just one of those wings.
It's just one of those wings.
Just one of those wings.
One of those wings.
It probably because it's like baby talk.
Yeah,
you know?
that's probably true. That's probably true.
Yeah. And remember on The Office, right? Like Andy's scared.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yes.
Oh, so it gets a little creepy towards the end of it, but it's so funny. All right. All right. I digress. So a false rumor leads to a run on Baggins. So it says Frodo had a very trying time that afternoon. A false rumor that the whole household was being distributed free spread like wildfire, and before long the place was packed with people who had no business there but could not be kept out. So this is just kind of the chaos happening, of like the run on Baggins, people trying to score whatever they can score while the scoring's good. So this is kind of where I get into this whole thing about hobbits and stuff, right? Hobbits seem to have this desire to like accumulate possessions, like possessing things seems to be a very cultural sort of idea, for them. And it gets back to that whole thing we said a couple of episodes ago, where Gandalf's advice to Bilbo is to stop possessing it, right? When it comes to the ring, right? Stop possessing it, which is a very interesting turn of phrase. It's not the way you'd put something like put that kind of idea normally, right?
Yeah, it's true.
But his advice to him is simply to stop possessing it. But this seems to be a problem for all the hobbits, right? They want to, it's like, oh, there's stuff available. I got to go get me some stuff, right? And they accumulate this clutter over their lifetimes, so much so that they kind of repeat the cycle, and people got to get the stuff from them, right? So just an interesting little idea about hobbit culture, if you will.
Yeah.
And the ways of hobbits. So the Sackville-Bagginses they return, and they're certain that that more is due to them. So they're looking for Frodo. Merry is here. Merry Brandybuck is here, trying to protect Frodo from let him get some peace and quiet for a little while. Otho Sackville-Baggins loudly demands to see Frodo, and Merry bows politely and says he is indisposed. He is resting. And Lobelia says, "You mean he's hiding?" Let me take a drink of water here. Fighting off that cold, like I said. So they demand to see Frodo, and Frodo finally agrees to it. It says Frodo was sitting at a table with a lot of papers in front of him. He looked indisposed to see the Sackville-Bagginses at any rate. And he stood up, fidgeting with something in his pocket, but he spoke quite politely. So first of all, he's fidgeting with something in his pocket. Wonder what that could be, right?
Question mark.
The ring. So this whole idea of possession is starting to kind of manifest itself, right? He's had the ring for he has possessed the ring for less than 24 hours, and he's already fidgeting with it, right? It's already like doing its work on him.
Yeah.
Isn't that just another like little detail that's easy to gloss over? But in the midst of all this like kind of run on this like kind of this sort of like spiritual aura manifestation, like the spiritual air around of just people trying to possess things, right? Changing hands, trying to get their hands on things. Like it's like the ring is becoming sort of like inflamed, and it's starting to do its spiritual work on Frodo, it seems, right? Or even possibly that the ring is kind of causing this chaos, right? It's like the it's sort of like radioactive with the spirit of possession, of like needing to possess and to be greedy and to hang on to things, right? It's almost like it's like having that impact on all the hobbits at once.
Interesting. So
I don't know. It's like, was it calling to the hobbits, perhaps? Like, is that why they all showed up that morning and they were like, let's get some stuff from Bag End? It's a really interesting little detail to consider in light of sort of what else is going on within this just short passage in this chapter.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking, I guess my brain kind of went to he was fiddling with it as I mean, he knew from Bilbo's party that the ring could make you disappear.
Yeah.
Right?
That's part of it too, of course.
I mean, who wouldn't want to disappear from this kind of situation?
Mm-hmm.
Just be done with all these rude, entitled people.
Yes.
Be done with it.
Yeah, I think that's also part of it. I mean, I think it's also calling to him in the sense of becoming invisible. We talked about that's one of the, the ring seems to have this ability to grant, like, it's almost like the, in a way, all right, so this is an interesting thought. You know how, like, of all of the Valar, it's like Melkor kind of had the powers of all of them, right? So he's created, he's one of the Ainur created, but he seems to kind of have, like, you have Manwë, he's the Lord of the Air. You have Aule, he's like the Lord of the Earth. Ulmo is the Lord of the Waters, and all of the Valar kind of have these different sorts of, like, they're lords and ladies over certain things, right?
Yep.
Melkor has, like, all of these things. Like, he has a little bit of all of them, or like a good bit of all of them within him. So he's not quite at the same level on any level, but he has enough of them to where it's like this kind of like special magic all his own, right? And it makes me kind of think of, like, the ring, the one ring versus, the 3 and the 7 and the 9, right? They all have their special relationships to, like, the elves and the dwarves and men, right? The one ring has all of those abilities. It's almost like it's the Melkor of the rings, right?
It's like, I want it all.
Yeah, and it gives that ability, so it grants to whoever possesses it, some, like, kind of special ability in that regard. And the desire of hobbits oftentimes is to remain unseen, right? To be unseen.
That's true. Yeah, to be overlooked and kind of in the shadows. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So Frodo has to deal with the Sackville-Bagginses now. One thing we should understand is that Otho would have been heir to Bilbo were it not for Bilbo adopting Frodo.
Right.
And just to kind of go back to the whole family tree thing, this is how that works. So we see Bilbo over here, and Bilbo adopts Frodo, his distant cousin. Otho is over here. So Bilbo, being the oldest child, the only child of Bungo Baggins and Belladonna Took. Bungo was the oldest child of Mungo Baggins, who was the oldest child of Balbo Baggins. So that's kind of the line of descent there. And then you have, and with Bungo, you have a daughter, a sister. I'm sorry, that comes next, Belba, and then Longo. And so Longo is the second son of Mungo, and then you have Otho being the son of Longo. So Bilbo and Otho are first cousins, right? Bilbo's father is the oldest of the previous generation, Longo being the second oldest son of the previous generation. So Bilbo dies without an heir, then it goes to Otho after that. That's how that works. So, and I think we'll save a little, some of the discussion about the Sackville-Bagginses maybe for our MATHOMS episode, because they're just kind of an interesting, they come up again and again, and just like little scenes, but just kind of thinking about, like, their whole relationship to Bilbo, and like, what's the deal with the last name. We've talked a little bit about that, but just kind of diving a little bit more into what Tolkien had to say about that whole phenomenon. All right, and of course they come up again towards the very end of Lord of the Rings, but that'll be a long time before we get there. So and then Frodo was Bilbo's third cousin once removed. Then we have this line. Lobelia says, so she's, like, searching around. She demands to see the will, and it's very clearly states that Frodo is the heir, to all of this. And
Otho demands to see it.
And Otho demands to see it. And Otho says, foiled again to his wife, I'm sorry. After waiting 60 years, we get spoons, right? He says, spoons, fiddlesticks, fiddlesticks. The etymology of fiddlesticks is an interjection is very hard to find. Okay, so fiddlestick, right? And this is the kind of stuff we do. Again, on Do Not Be Hasty, right? We look this stuff up. Fiddlesticks, okay? Fiddlestick obviously is just like it's a bow you use to play the fiddle. And so what I was able to find is that at some point in Shakespeare's lifetime, it seems fiddlesticks began to be used for something insignificant or trivial. This may have been because a violin bow was regarded as inconsequential, or perhaps simply because the word sounds intrinsically silly. It took on a humorous slant as a word one could use to replace another in a contemptuous response to a remark. George Farquhar used it in this way in his play Sir Henry Wildair of 1701, Golden Pleasures, Golden Fiddlesticks. From here, it was a short step to using the word as a disparaging comment to mean that something just said was nonsense. Now, that seems to be, there's a lot more that could be said about that, but at the very least, it seems to be a term that's been used for a long time, right? Going all the way back to 1701, maybe even back to the time of Shakespeare. But, it's something that we don't really say anymore these days, except in kind of a comical or ironic way as sort of a, alternative to something like,
like a four-letter word.
Like a four-letter word, right?
Yeah.
I think Mr. Burns on The Simpsons says fiddlesticks a lot. And that's like very, that's kind of the whole thing, the whole shtick with Mr. Burns is that he's like super old.
Gotcha.
Anyway, we have to talk about that word because, it's there and, this is a Tolkien podcast.
Absolutely. And we're not being hasty.
We're not being hasty.
Yeah.
All right. So the chapter ends with a great little exchange between Lobelia and Frodo and Merry. Lobelia says to Frodo, "You'll live to regret it, young fellow. Why didn't you go too? You don't belong here. You're no Baggins. You're a Brandybuck." And Frodo says, "Did you hear that, Merry? That was an insult, if you like," said Frodo as he shut the door on her. "It was a compliment," said Merry Brandybuck, and so, of course, not true. Just good stuff, right? Every good Hobbit seems like they are an insult comic in some way. Merry just can't resist to turn this he really has his buddy's back, right? But he can't resist just throwing a little bit of an insult in there, right? Because if it's a compliment towards Frodo, it can't be true, right?
Because Frodo doesn't deserve compliments.
Yes. So, wanted to also just mention briefly this word. You know what? I'm gonna save this one for our MATHOMS episode. The discussion of lobelia as a flower. I think that'll be one for our MATHOMS. So,
okay.
All right, Greta. What did I miss?
Nothing.
Think we covered everything?
I think you did a good job.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't think of anything. I think just what really kind of struck me, and I know we'll go into the Sackville-Bagginses more, like you said, in later episodes, but it's just kind of it's just very head shaking. It's just kind of like, who do you think you are? And just that whole kind of that air of entitlement and like deserving something, like just because you happen to be related to someone, like just that idea of being owed something that you did nothing to earn. Yeah. It just is very irking to me.
Yeah. Entitled people are not very much fun to be around.
No, they are definitely not.
And it'll be interesting to like kind of go into the little bit of family history, take that divergence on our MATHOMS episode. But it's just a big takeaway there is just don't be an entitled jerk.
Entitled.
Yeah.
No.
Don't be an entitled jerk.
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, what strikes me most from this passage is how much Bilbo left behind. Indeed, he had to stop possessing so much in order to feel free. This will be a recurring theme, and let's be honest, it's a deep truth of our reality. Furthermore, Frodo seems utterly unlike the other hobbits we meet. Not only does he seem a little deeper and more reflective, but he seems far less concerned with possessions than most of the other hobbits. If indeed Frodo was chosen for the mission that awaits, could that indeed be one of the reasons the ring was doomed to come to him? While Frodo, having inherited Bag End for the time, is not by any means impoverished, there is a sense that he is poor in spirit, and the sense of being free of the desire to possess. As we near the end of a long-expected party, Gandalf will return to say farewell, though our happily ever after seems increasingly far off. All right.
That's an interesting. I really like what how you closed that off, and it just. You're right. Bilbo left a lot behind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there like all this stuff that he gave away, and there was still more, right? Because I think it even says there was no mention of money or jewelry that was given away, but he had that too. So in addition to all the things he gave away, there was still more on top of that, right? But the only thing he really struggled to leave behind was the ring, which is, like really goes back to what you were saying about the effect that ring has on you.
Yeah.
Or on whoever has it. It's just this kind of the spirit of possession and attachment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, it kind of seems to have this like radioactive effect.
Yeah.
Like spiritually radioactive.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider supporting us in one or all of the following ways.
First, join the Fellowship of the Road. There, I did it. Join the Fellowship of the Road by visiting patreon.com/TolkienRoad. When you join the Fellowship of the Road, it helps us to keep on evering on and lands you some cool perks along the way. Learn more at patreon.com/TolkienRoad.
Second, if you're watching, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what's on your mind in the comments below.
Finally, subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes or the platform of your choice. If you are a 5-star fan of the Tolkien Road, you can really help us out by heading over to iTunes or your preferred source for the show and dropping us a rating and review. When you do that, it helps get the word out about the Tolkien Road. Yeah, Tolkien Road. Yeah, the Woken Road. The Tolkien Road, which helps us to keep on evering on.
As always, keep the correspondence coming. We'll do our best to respond to you somehow and at some point. With Don't Be Hasty, we'll let the mail pile up and then do a big mailbag episode at the end of each chapter. We can't promise you that it will be read on air, but we'll do our best, and some correspondence most certainly will.
Don't forget to stop by truemythspress.com for great merch like super styling and comfy Tolkien Road t-shirts. Struggling. 2 Trees camper mugs and signed copies of John's books. Once again, that's truemythspress.com. Thanks for supporting our work with your purchase.
To close, as always, we'd like to thank our amazing fellowship. We know all of you half as well as we should like, and we've thanked less than half of you half as well as you deserve. Special thanks to the following: John R,
Kaitlyn of Tea with Tolkien,
KG,
Melkor 27,
Saber Systems,
Emilio P,
Jonathan D,
Richard K,
Paul D,
Julia,
Werty,
Chris B,
2or91,
Carolyn S,
Emiel K,
Brian O. II,
Jonathan R,
Matthew W,
Daniel D,
Harrison C,
Jason C,
Seb M,
Ms. Anonymous,
Andrew T,
Red Hawk,
Shannon S,
Brian O. the First,
Zeke F,
James L,
Chris L,
Aja V,
Ish of the Hammer,
Teresa C,
David of Pints with Jack,
and Eric B. Awesome. Finally, thanks to all for watching and or listening. Until next time, the road goes ever on.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.